Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, January 16th, 2022, and today I'm going to be talking about the state of Tennessee and their brand new congressional map that the Republican Party has put forth. Now, I know you've heard a lot about redistricting and the process itself and changes to maps like Ohio and North Carolina and things of that nature, and in the state of Tennessee, it isn't really much different from what we have seen in those previous two states. The Republican Party made an effort to cut out the Democratic Party in these new congressional districts, and they did so efficiently. This map does not violate the Voting Rights Act, and it's in a position where the Republicans can pass this through and it can be finalized, and they plan to do so on January 31st. And with this together, this will reduce the Democratic Party's representation in the state of Tennessee from 2 congressional seats down to just 1, meaning there will be 8 Republicans in Congress and just 1 Democrat. Altogether, that's a total of 11% in terms of representation in a state that the Democratic Party in the last election received 38% of the vote in. So while Donald Trump was able to defeat Joe Biden by a pretty hefty margin, an exact margin of 23.2%, now there seems to be the advantage for the GOP, which gives them about 78% in terms of more representation over the Democratic Party. So you can see already how this map is an extreme gerrymander meant to benefit the GOP in every single way possible. They have sole control over how this process is ran, and this puts them in a position where they can finalize this map and give the Democrats just 1 out of 9 seats in total. And it may seem that, this is not necessarily the most extreme map. We've seen Ohio with more districts represent nearly the same amount for the Democratic Party, but Ohio was just struck down, and North Carolina looks like it's on the pathway there. In fact, I would argue that this new Tennessee gerrymander is one of the most insane gerrymanders we have seen across the nation. There are a few exceptions, maybe Utah with the Salt Lake City not being represented by a fair congressional district. You also have a bunch of other states that have drawn maps 5-1, 6-1 in favor of the Republican Party, but none are seemingly worse by percentage than the state of Tennessee, beyond the states that draw out Democratic districts entirely. And seeing the Democratic Party with just 1 out of 9 seats doesn't really make sense based off of what we have seen in the past and the historical precedent in the state of Tennessee. But Republicans don't seem to care. Here's the old map from the state of Tennessee. This map gave the GOP 7 red seats. I mean, these were not competitive. We can talk about how they have changed over time. We can see from 2012 through 2020 that not a single Republican district was competitive except for the 4th district in 2012. And even then, the GOP won it by a margin of 12 percentage points. Then in 2014, it went to the Republicans by 23. In 2016 by 30. Even in 2018, it went by 30 as well. And in 2020 by 33. So looking at these districts, the GOP really had such a strong grip on the state of Tennessee when it came down to representation. They were winning district after district by very solid margins. The 1st district by 52, the 2nd by 37, the 3rd by 37, the 4th by 33. The 5th they were losing, the 6th they won by 50, the 7th they won by 43, the 8th they won by 39, and they lost the 9th district to the Democratic Party. They were consolidating the Democratic Party's vote share. And they did so efficiently for the entirety of the 2010s. I mean, looking at the margins here, the Republican Party was able to win every single one of these districts regardless of the election year. 2014, they had solid elections. 2016, a presidential election. 2018, a Democratic wave year where you had Phil Bredesen, the popular governor who ran for United States Senate, who lost by about 10 percentage points across the state, in a state where Democrats typically lose by about 20 to 25 points. Looking at the House elections, though, not a singular competitive district. Every single one of the Democratic and Republican districts were safe red or blue. And now, Republicans are putting up a new map that makes it so there is only 1 safe blue seat, and the rest remain just as safe before. So what are they doing exactly? How is this a gerrymander? Well, of course, the Democratic Party receives 38% of the vote, so they should get, in a perfect world, 38% in terms of representation. That's about, let's see here, not necessarily 4 out of 9, but closer to 3 out of 9 in terms of where it should be. And looking at this map here, 2 out of 9 was already a gerrymander, especially considering none of them were competitive, but now just giving the Democrats 1 out of 9 absolutely is. Because they're keeping the Memphis area. It would be very difficult to try to cut out Memphis and Shelby County here in an effort to draw a new map, and it would probably be shot down in court through the Voting Rights Act. Seeing, this region of the state, it is very important that this region stayed together, so the Republicans didn't touch it. But they did make it slightly less Democratic, which I found to be quite interesting, but it really doesn't make all the difference. Now, in the Nashville area, you have another population center. It's Davidson County here, where the Democratic Party is looking to have the, ideal representation, meaning one district here and then one district in the Memphis area. They don't have this district anymore because Nashville and Davidson County have been split not just into 2 districts, but into 3 districts in a clear and concerted effort to siphon the votes away from the Democratic Party in the Nashville area. And I mention this all the time. Democrats do this too. They take their own, areas and they siphon them off because the cities sometimes are so large you can draw them into rural areas and make them actually safe blue districts. But that's not the case in the state of Tennessee. Obviously, the Republican Party does not want to do that. So they take this region and they draw 3 districts that are touching within Davidson County, and they make it so they are capturing in big swaths of, this looks like Vermont, big swaths of rural parts of the state and combining it into the inner city Nashville. I mean, does this make sense? The answer is no. This is a clear gerrymander, but Republicans are going to move forward with it because they want to strike back, or at least they want to strike down as hard as they can because they know the Democratic Party is gearing up states such as New York and isn't really doing as bad as they were supposed to, considering the GOP had a 100-seat advantage over the Democrats when it came down to the process entirely. But seeing it, they have taken what was a safe blue district right here with Representative Jim Cooper, a partisan lean of Democrat plus 17, and turned it into a district that has a partisan lean on the complete opposite part at Republican plus 16. They did this intentionally so he would lose in 2022. And it makes a lot of sense. Looking at what happens now in this 5th district, Jim Cooper just simply does not have the votes to win. And he's going to be running some type of election bid that simply isn't going to matter. And of course he is angry. I mean, he has been representing this district for quite some time now. And if you take a look at what he's been saying, he says, the General Assembly has formally begun gerrymandering Nashville and Davidson County into political oblivion. He says they will be reduced from proud citizens of a capital city to captives inside of 3 colonies run from Clarksville, Cookeville, and Columbia. He says the damage this map does to the political influence of minority groups in Nashville is devastating. Our robust, diverse communities in Nashville are represented and affirmed in Washington, D.C. when Nashville has its own voice in Congress. He says that this is the first time in 230 years that Nashville has been broken up for the purpose of redistricting, that they should feel insulted and abused by the new maps. I mean, looking at the years on end that Nashville has been together, seeing that it's all of a sudden broken up in a partisan effort to just add an additional Republican seat does look very negative for the GOP. But it's nothing that people weren't really expecting. That's why he said he's been warning it for almost a year now. And it is something that he says. He points out the fact that the Tennessee Titans Stadium will be in one congressional district and the team's practice facility is in another. Something that hits home for many people in the Nashville area, that these are real changes to your community, and these are completely changing who represents you in Congress. Instead of it being a Democrat like most inner cities typically have and should have based off of their partisan vote, they now will be represented by 3 Republicans. This is nothing against, the Republican Party in this case. This is more saying that it isn't fair to have Nashville represented by 3 Republicans when the city itself is very clearly not pro-Republican. Do you get what I'm saying? Even if you are a Republican, I don't think it's fair for you to say that, a Republican should be representing a very clearly Democratic city 3 ways across. I mean, it simply doesn't make sense, and it is a very clear and concerted effort to reduce the Democratic Party's representation, not only in the state of Tennessee, but also nationally. But the good news for the sake of gerrymandering is that there wasn't much damage done beyond this individual seat. I think that, when we look at these gerrymandered maps, often we talk about larger states such as Ohio and North Carolina, where the congressional maps have reduced 2 to 3 seats for the Democratic Party, or when we take a look at Illinois, when they have reduced 3 seats for the GOP. I mean, larger seats, larger states obviously have much bigger implications because more than just a singular district is losing their own representative. And looking at this district here, obviously it isn't good for either political party to have gerrymandering, but obviously this benefits the GOP, and they aren't going to shoot it down. They have everything they need They know the state of Tennessee courts will uphold it. They know that they are not violating the Voting Rights Act. They know they are well within their boundaries to draw this map. So they are going to do it. And so they have. And looking at every single one of these districts, every single one of them has a Republican lean by 15 points or higher. Every single one. I mean, these maps are not going to be super competitive. The only worry I would say, if I was on the Republican strategy team for this map, I see that Mark Green used to be in a Republican plus 42 district, and now he is in a Republican plus 20 district. I also see that the 5th district has a Republican lean of plus 16. While it isn't necessarily super possible for Democrats to win these two districts in the immediate future, by the end of the 2020s, it is possible that the 5th district could flip back to blue, and then we repeat the process all over again. Republicans siphon them off, and they end up back to a red district. But it's not entirely out of the equation in the future, even though it is Republican plus 16, because there are actually a bunch of districts that were Republican plus 14, 15, 16 that went blue in the 2018 midterm elections, given the national environment. So maybe it's possible, especially considering the Nashville area is growing, which could also mean that maybe Mark Green could be in a bit of competitive trouble in the future. But for right now, for what we know, these are all going to be safe red. So why did this happen? First of all, it makes sense. The GOP wants to cut out Democratic support in the state of Tennessee. They've been seeing how the Democrats have consistently won 2 seats here, and they were thinking, is there any way we can change this? And the answer is yes. I mean, the map was so bad in these two districts for the GOP, they were never able to make it competitive, even in years such as 2014 or 2016. So they decided to split it up. It was bad in, what you saw with Jim Cooper in his 5th district here, that it was an uncontested race in 2020. And now he probably won't even be a top tier candidate for this individual race. This came as a direct retaliation of the Democratic Party holding a majority in the delegation from the state of Tennessee throughout the entirety of the 2000s. Looking at 2002, 2004, 2006, 2008, the Democratic Party had the majority in the delegation, and they were winning by a lot. In the 4th district, they won by 21, they won by 49, they won by 35, they won by 100%, they won by 83%. In 2010, that was all lost. Democrats were reduced down to just 2%, and you can see here that they were defeated by exceptionally large margins. But still, the districts held out. They were redrawn by Republicans to fit a new map that was beneficial for the GOP, but still kept the Democrats in their place. But now it just simply isn't going to be a reality. The Republican Party is going to have full and total control in terms of the House delegation in the state of Tennessee for likely the next 6 to 8 years at a minimum. And it's very possible that if there isn't a blue wave year in time for the next redistricting time frame, the next census here, that the map ends up with 8-1 in the advantage for the GOP pretty consistently and does not waver much. The only thing we could see is potentially competitive race, but if Democrats aren't able to flip anything, then the overall partisan control doesn't change, and that's just how it is. Now, I mentioned the national map for a reason, because the Democratic Party currently is up about 7 Democratic-leaning seats, and Republicans are up 1 Republican-leaning seat. The state of Tennessee is going to reduce a Democratic-leaning seat, which means it will be +6, and it will add a Republican-leaning seat, meaning Republicans will be at +2 nationwide. What this has done effectively has taken away the Democratic Party from having that additional seat. And it doesn't seem like an additional seat would be a lot between the Democrats and the Republicans, but recognize that with so many districts already solidified, let's see here exactly how many. So far we have approved of, let me go ahead and grab a calculator really quickly so we can see how many districts in total have been approved of here. We have 99 solid Democratic districts, 29 competitive Democratic districts, 21 highly competitive districts, 20 competitive Republican districts, and 99 solid Republican districts, meaning there are 268 congressional districts, with 167 yet to be gone. So 268 districts have been drawn, yet there isn't a clear advantage for the GOP or really either political party. This is moving incrementally, which means every single seat matters. And considering that the Democratic Party currently has a majority of just 4 seats in the House of Representatives, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are looking for the best ways for them to advance in the House of Representatives. All the GOP needs is just a handful of seats, and they have the majority. All the Democratic Party needs is to advance where they were relative to the 2020 House elections, and potentially could hold on to control simply because the new districts are drawn in a way that it makes it hard for them to lose. But obviously that becomes increasingly more like a pipe dream for the Democratic Party as the days go on and as Joe Biden begins to deteriorate in terms of overall approval. But what you should take away from this is that this new map is an intentional gerrymander, but we really shouldn't be surprised. This was widely expected, and it does reduce the Democratic Party's representation. It's an effort to subvert the Democratic Party at winning the majority not only in 2022, but also in future elections. And it just makes it much more difficult in the future for Democrats to win in Tennessee, and will likely take them at the least 6 to 8 years to make Tennessee have a competitive, potentially Democratic-leaning district in the future. And then 2 years later or 4 years later, the cycle will repeat itself and we'll be back to where we are right now. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.